Peace and blessings, sisters and family. First off, I want to say happy Veterans Day to all of our men and women in the armed forces who have served our country and protected us and helped keep us safe. Thank you so much for your service. We are grateful for the sacrifices that you and your families have made to make sure that we can be here another day. So thank you so much for that. I hope that you are enjoying hopefully what is a peaceful day off. Thank you so much. Welcome to this week's episode of Sis, We Need to Talk. I am your host, Tisha Hillman, and this is a show that is dedicated to speaking to Black women in particular about the ways that we can have fruitful and productive conversations about who we really are and what we really want in our quest for equality, and also about what some of those desires actually look like, what they look like and how they translate into real world kinetic energy, so to speak, or movement, in order to facilitate the quest for equality that we say that we want. So today I want to talk about a topic that I know some of you guys are going to be upset, and I know that these shows are going to piss off a lot of people. Now understand this, just because something is provocative doesn't mean that it is to provoke anger. The purpose of my show, like I said, is to have a dialogue, to be able to have a conversation with my sisters, to really be able to have conversations that sometimes we don't have. Because the truth of the matter, if we really look at the thing, people can't tell us nothing. Come on, Black women, come on. People can't tell us nothing. And so that's not really healthy. Because if you always got the amen choir behind you, the amen choir ain't on your side. I guarantee you that. Because if you have people in your life that are not telling you the truth about who you really are and about circumstances in which you find yourself that are affecting who you are, they don't love you. Because that's not love, right? Because, if you follow any kind of biblical principles, right? The Bible says that an enemy multiplies kisses, but wounds from a friend can be trusted. And so I hope that you may not call me your friend, but I hope you understand that what I'm saying is to help us all to look at ourselves really, to really take a hard look in the mirror and see some of the nasty, ugly truths about ourselves that we don't want to admit. And I hope that if it causes something to stir within your soul, that you don't shut that out, but you realize that that stirring is happening for a reason. And we'll certainly talk about that. But I want to talk about these bags. You guys know, if you've listened to my show before, you know that I always close out, and I'll even start with my closing statement today. Every week I close out the show and I say, sis, we don't have to carry all the bags that we've been given. Because finding our true passion, finding our passion isn't just about family and careers and money, but it's really about finding our authentic self. And our authentic self is usually what lies underneath the desires or our role in fulfilling the desires of other people. Because oftentimes we can ignore things within our own universe, or as I say, the you and I verse, right? Because it is about you and I. And so if we are ignoring the things that are in our own universe, in our own circle, how can we possibly spread what we need to spread and give the light and the energy that we need to give to our universe if we're ignoring the things that are actually happening and corresponding within our universe? So with that being said, I want to talk about these bags that we carry. Because sisters, we've been tripping for a long time. And it's about time that we unpack these bags. Because when you go on a trip, I know I've done it many, many times, right? You go on a trip and it's like a week later and those packed bags are still sitting there waiting for you to unpack, right? So we've been tripping. We've been tripping. And I want to talk about that because we have been tripping. Let's unpack some of those bags, right? What do those bags actually look like? And so that's going to be the topic of the show. But before I even get there, I want to talk about what I call the three T's, or Tisha's trending topics, if you will. And so today we're actually going to segue into a fourth topic in order to kind of flow into the rest of the show. But I want to first talk about the election. So my show's on Monday, obviously. Last week, the elections, as we know, November 6th, Election Day, all across the country. All of the seats in the House of Representatives in the United States Congress, all the seats in the House were up for grabs. And the Democrats managed to take back the House. The Republicans maintained control of the Senate. But in true electoral fashion comes the Monday morning quarterbacking and, the autopsy of the election that happens, now because of the 24-hour news cycle. It happens in real time. And so if you guys have been paying attention to what happened in the election, there were some hangups, right? And now we're facing recounting of votes, specifically in Georgia and in Florida. And as you guys probably know, Andrew Gillum, who is a fellow FAMU Rattler, went to FAMU for undergrad, so I'm very excited about that. But anyway, Andrew Gillum running for governor, first black governor, and if he were to win the election, first black governor in Florida. Now we'll talk about voter suppression, right? But here's the thing that baffles me. I'm not really sure how my home state of Florida, and if y'all listening, I need for somebody to really help me to understand, how is it possible for Florida to mess up the election every time? I don't, like, you would think that, okay, so after one election, we know 2000, the Bush-Gore thing, that caused some issues, right? But every time we have an election, Florida is on some craziness. How? How, Sway? How do y'all stay on some craziness with elections? Please get that fixed, because it's not helping us at all for us to continue to find ourselves in these situations. Now, voter suppression is real. I'm not sure if you guys saw the video, but they found boxes and boxes of uncounted provisional ballots in a storage facility. So what that means is thousands of votes were not counted. So think about it. If those provisional ballots were left in a storage facility, I refuse to believe, with an election as polarizing as this particular election was, that somehow that just, someone just forgot. I don't buy it. You need more people. I don't buy it, right? That was intentional. That is what is called voter suppression. That is an attempt to suppress your vote. Because here's the thing. Republicans know that if all of the people that are of voting age actually exercise their right to vote, they would lose every single election. So what does that tell you? That tells me that it's in their vested interest to find ways to make voting harder, just like they did in the civil rights movement, in the civil rights era. They made sure that people were intimidated, which is why voter intimidation is illegal. They sick dogs on people, water hoses. They beat people. They had these ridiculous reading tests and all of these made up rules, right, that people had to go through in order to put hurdles in people's way. Now think about it. If someone is intentionally putting a hurdle in your way, why would that be? Because they see value in what is happening. So if they see value in your vote, of course they're going to put obstacles in your way to make it harder for you to do that. And so we find ourselves in this very, very interesting situation where our people were made to wait online for 2-3 hours. I've heard election and polling locations, specifically in minority communities, were closed down. They shut down, and in various states, like, they shut down the polls and they moved them far. One, so that it caused transportation issues. They closed down polling places to make sure that when you did get to vote, that it took longer, with the hopes that you get frustrated. Then they did this other thing where now there's this issue with, the signatures don't match. So in some places, I guess maybe your ID, the signature on your ID plus your voter registration card or whatever, they need to match, or on your ballot or whatever, they have to match. But either way, it's absolutely asinine. And the whole purpose of it is to disenfranchise voters. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for the foolishness, because they're going to do it over and over and over because it works. It works. And we'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about how it's worked on people. And here's the thing that sometimes I don't understand is our ancestors, some of whom are still alive, fought for this right to vote. And some of us have fallen victim to this narrative. I won't even say victim. We've fallen for this narrative that your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. I guarantee you that the people on the other side absolutely know it counts, because if that were not true, there would not be so much voter suppression. They would not have gutted the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act if your vote did not, in fact, matter. Now, we're going to talk about what that actually looks like on the ground and whether or not that translates into change, right, for your particular political leanings. So that's something completely different than your vote actually doing something kinetic. Voting is the low-hanging fruit, folks, right? It's the low-hanging fruit. And so if we can't take the low-hanging fruit, what are we doing? So we should really, really explore that, because the issue is going to keep coming up so long as these movements to stop people from voting continue, and they will. And we continue to fall for the narrative that our vote doesn't count, that we shouldn't vote because both parties are the same. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, I've been seeing lately articles talking about our ancestors died for this right to vote, but yet somehow we only invoke the name of our ancestors in those times when it comes to voting. The devil doesn't need any more advocates. I hope there's a close-up on my face when I say that, because the devil doesn't need any more advocates. And so sometimes I wonder, as a people who've been largely oppressed in this country since its inception, why? Like, why would we do that? It seems counterproductive to any sort of progress that we're trying to make, to then say to someone else, well, why are you invoking the names of your ancestors for this purpose and not for others? Yes, should we absolutely invoke the name of our ancestors and the spirits of our ancestors for other purposes? Absolutely. But to then criticize someone for exercising their right to vote after, yes, it is true, our ancestors fought and some died for that right. Should we vote simply because of that? No, but is that a good reason? Damn right. But at the same time, we should vote because it's the low-hanging fruit. And so if we claim to be, and I believe that we are, a people without substantial power in this power structure that we currently find ourselves, if we find ourselves largely in a place without power, why would you not exercise the little power that you have? I don't get it, right? There's so many of us already that cannot vote because of oppressive laws. And we know that to be true. We have people right now doing bids in prison for nonviolent drug offenses that are now labeled convicted felons that cannot vote. And so now are we saying to those who actually can vote, don't do it because it's stupid? And so when you get the outcome that looks like what we're facing right now in this country, blame yourself. If you're spreading that narrative, blame yourself. Because it's absolutely asinine to tell people that have largely been oppressed in this country to not exercise a little bit of power that we have. I'm off my soapbox about that. I find it to be absolutely crazy that this is really what we're saying to each other. So folks, we got to get it together. We really got to get it together, because we're so quick to jump on the bandwagon of, these think pieces and what the majority are saying, and we don't stop and slow things down and look at how is this narrative affecting me and my people and my universe. How? If this narrative is toxic to our people, guess what, sis? Guess what, my brothers? It's toxic. And we need to get rid of it. Anything that's toxic will kill you. Get rid of it, period. So, and I want to say this about voting. We may not like the process. Hell, we may not even like the parties. That's not my beef. But understand this. Voting is the currency of the theater. The political theater. Just because you don't like the currency of the theater doesn't then change the nature of the currency, does it? So what I'm saying is, you may not like it, but it's what we have. And so until that changes, we got to find a way to play the hand you're dealt. Period. That's what this is all about. It's playing chess and not out here playing pinochle or whatever the hell sometimes we find ourselves playing. It's really playing the game of chess and thinking about the long-term strategy and not allowing ourselves to be so caught up emotionally that we no longer make rational decisions or give rational thought to the things that we do. Because what we do when we do that is in essence, we throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? If you had a real life baby, you would not give that baby a bath to wash off the dirt and then toss the baby out the window. Hopefully not, right? Why? Because you realize that it's stupid. It's stupid. And so, are we going to give up the good for the sake of not getting the great? That's what I'm saying. And so, if it looks like progress, and we understand that it is progress, then accept the progress. But to say, I wanted a job paying $200,000 a year. Instead, I got offered $150,000. So I'm gonna say, screw this job. You wouldn't do that, would you? Because it's stupid. So we gotta stop trading our lack of getting the great at the sake of the good. Sometimes you gotta see progress where it is. And I was talking about this last week when we talk about our allies, because under the whole same umbrella, we fall into these narratives where we shame people, we call them names, we put them on blast on social media. And these people are our allies, right? So it's under the same principle. We cannibalize our allies and then we all lose. How does that make sense? Sometimes you got to understand that most of our allies, folks, are not perfect. The same way we're not. We have imperfect allies. And so you got to get in where you fit in, use it for what it's worth, and throw the rest away, right? Get the progress where you can. Advance the narrative where you can. If it's going to advance your people, advance that where you can. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because what you're going to end up with is a clean baby, but no baby. How does that make sense? So before I go into the other topics, we're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. We're going to talk about the other T's, and we're going to talk about today's topic.
State and local government exercise very important functions in the United States. They are responsible for creating state legislation, which can become state law. They plan and pay for roads, run public schools, parks and libraries, provide water and utilities, and organize law enforcement, elections, and much more. As citizens, local government is more easily obtainable and are the means in which we communicate to the federal government. This is why it is important that we vote in more than just primary presidential elections. Midterm and local elections are just as, if not more, important for our communities and its efficiency. Resistance is local. Criminal justice reform is local. Gentrification is local. And the right to vote is a privilege that once was not granted to all citizens because of their gender, race, or ethnicity. So today, we are all afforded this right, and we should vote at every given opportunity, simply because we can. Early voting is October 25th through November 1st, and the official midterm election date is November 6th. For more information on voting in poll areas, please visit the link below.
Welcome back to Sis We Need to Talk. This segment is brought to you by the Law Office of Tisha S. Hillman. If you are looking for a family law, criminal law, personal injury attorney in the Maryland area, please contact the Law Office of Tisha S. Hillman. I've heard that the lawyer there is absolutely amazing, and she'll get you the justice the justice you deserve. That's a whole nother segment, but she's great. How about that? You can certainly visit the website at www.tshillmanlaw.com. You can also give us a call at 301-744-7996. I know, shameless plug. But anyway, before the break, we were talking about the election and some of the foolishness that happened in Georgia and Florida that resulted in runoff elections. I'm sorry, not runoff elections, but recounting of the ballots because of things like voter suppression and hiding ballots and just generally being terrible in order to win. And I'm specifically talking about the Republican Party doing this, per usual. So, disenfranchising the voters in order to win elections. If you got to cheat to win, I don't know. Do the means really justify the ends? To them it does. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the Democrats will do well to kind of look at things that way. Not saying voter suppression, but I am saying thinking about strategic ways to actually win without, voter suppression, because that's not good. But folks, here's the thing. If nothing changes, no thing changes. And we got to remember that. And so when it comes to elections, we got to hold our elected officials accountable because, yes, they absolutely work for us. We voted them in. But one of the problems that we can have sometimes as people is we vote in the same people because of name recognition or ignorance or whatever the case may be, but yet then we don't hold their feet to the fire. And so when we're on this whole bandwagon, and I've seen this a lot under these fake woke accounts, which first of all, I really hope we retire that word. Because my thing is for so many people to be woke, it's a lot of folk out here walking around in a dream state. And so we got to really look at things in the reality. And in the reality, people's voting rights are being suppressed. And on top of that, you have these fake woke accounts telling people both parties are the same. Don't vote. Voting is stupid. You got, people like Snoop Dogg. I'm very disappointed. Very, very disappointed in that. Well, recently there was a video of him smoking a blunt in front of the White House. First of all, you can't openly smoke weed in D.C. That's my understanding of the marijuana laws in D.C. You can't openly smoke marijuana with just walking down the street, first and foremost. But here's the thing. You ain't Snoop. Snoop got lawyers. Snoop don't live here. He can get on a private jet and fly back to California, and if he gets hit with any charges, he got high-priced lawyers that can help him get off. I mean, he beat a murder case. Come on. You ain't Snoop. Don't go smoke a blunt in front of the White House. That's just stupid. And to even encourage our people to do something like that is setting you up for failure. Because guess what? I'm sure Snoop wouldn't tell his son to do that. Why? Because the consequences. Don't listen to these people. And then, in the video, he was talking about, basically calling people stupid for voting. But here's the thing. The reason he has the right to smoke marijuana legally, is because people voted. So then to tell people not to vote is stupid. And I'm going to get off the voting thing. It's just, there's been so much craziness around voting lately. And my people, please don't fall for it. Because it's certainly there. We jump on these bandwagons of emotional stuff because it feels good emotionally, but we don't think about the impact that it has because we don't think things through. We're so emotional. You got to stop being emotional and just take it for what it is. And if it's not, if it's toxic to you, throw it to the side. Use the good for what it is, toss the rest to the side. That's sort of the theme of everything that I'm talking about today, because it matters. So back to California. Obviously, you guys, if you've been following the news, California is in a state of crazy right now with these wildfires. And if you watch any of these videos or any of the photographs, it almost looks apocalyptic, right? And I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying it looks like that. If you were to envision what the apocalypse, if there was such a thing, to what it would look like. My understanding is from the last count, I think it was 12 people died. Some people got trapped in their cars, got burned to death in their vehicles. We really, really gotta, keep California in our prayers, because, if you're a praying people, whatever, please keep them in your prayers. Not in the ridiculous way, the thoughts and prayers after every public shooting, but for real. Because I can only imagine waking up and my whole city's on fire. So our prayers are certainly with the people in California who are being impacted by the wildfires. Also in California, another shooting, another week in America, another shooting. And guess what, folks? Per usual, the shooter was not a black man, was not a Muslim, did not come from one of the 7 countries on Trump's ban list. Instead, he was homegrown, he was white, he was male. This is a running theme. But yet, this country is so against telling the truth and calling the real threat what it is. Because here's the thing, if you see over and over and over that the same people are doing the same things, you would say those people are a threat. They say it to the black community all the time, right? You're saying, okay, well, this black man had his middle finger up in the air in a photograph. Clearly he's a thug. Like, they take our behaviors that are not even violent behaviors, but those that have been criminalized by, a punitive system, that have been criminalized to say who we are, right? But will not look at the actual behaviors of the things that they're actually doing and label that, right? Because instead, what it is it's mental illness. How do we always know when a shooter is not black or Muslim? Because 1, they don't talk about their criminal history right away. 2, they don't show their photograph. And 3, they never call them a thug or a terrorist, right? Tell me I'm lying. We know it's true. There is a reason for that. Because our people can do something, right? One of us can do something and our entire group gets labeled as whatever. That's just who those people are. But you have masses of white men, Christian men, doing these behaviors, and none of them are ever labeled extremists. None of them are ever labeled threats. None of them are ever labeled terrorists. That's an issue. Because, folks, until you look in the mirror and you see the truth, you will never acknowledge it. And again, if nothing changes, no thing changes. And so I call out to all of the white women who may be listening to this. These are your men. Get your people. Get your people. Because here's the thing. If it was a black man doing that or anyone else, it would be an issue. It is an issue because these people are terrorizing our country. You can't even have people go to the theater or go do yoga or go to church or go to mosque or go to anything without the fear, the real life fear of a deranged, no, I'm not even going to say that, of a white man who's been radicalized by this country, walking into a facility and executing people en masse. But no one calls it what it is. Look at what's right in front of you. Address that. Because, if you're a Christian person, the Bible says, take the plank out of your own eye before you attempt to take the speck out of the eye of someone else. And I'm going to leave that at that. Now, I talk a lot on the show, and obviously this show is Sis, We Need to Talk. And I'm speaking directly to my black sisters. And I want to talk about, just kind of piggybacking off of a subject that I talked about last week, about what we actually want from our men. And, this goes into what I'm going to talk about with unpacking our bags, right? I saw a video yesterday that was so troubling. It was so troubling. Because remember last week I told y'all about this this group that I won't mention of men who are, somebody calling me up, but of men who are sort of moving away from women. And to the extent of, they're basically calling women sluts and whores and, parasites and all of these sort of really, really terrible things. But like I said, cause and effect, right? And this video, for me, is a reminder of how our behavior actually impacts other people. And it creates this force, right? It creates this energy that causes other people to act. Now, again, I want to be clear when I say this. Everyone is responsible for their own behaviors, right? Just because someone says something or does something to you does not, by virtue of that alone, give you reason to act an ass, right? It does not. So we do got to take some responsibility for it. So, what I'm saying is these gentlemen have to take responsibility for the things that they say on their platform. And, but this video, this woman is going off, like flipping out. And in essence, she's saying that if a man takes her on a date and pays for the date using a credit card, that he didn't really take her on a date, because in her belief, the government paid for that date. I'm not really sure if she doesn't understand how credit cards work. I don't know. But to say that this man now owes you another date because he paid for it with a credit card. Sis, what do we want? What do you want from men? So if a man doesn't take you on a date, first of all, even though we make more money than they do, we actually have jobs, right? We're not incarcerated at the levels that they are, right? And then for you to say, you got to take me on a date, because this is what we want, inequality, right? This is what we want. But we want equality the way that we want it, and that's not real equality. And so you got to ask yourself what you actually want. Because if you're saying you got to do all of these things, and then when you take me on a date, if you don't use cash, somehow it invalidates the entire experience. How? I really want someone to be able to articulate that for me, because it makes no sense. And here's the thing. While a lot of people clearly understood that she was, on some other stuff, I know, because I know us, oh my goodness, I know us as black women. I know that she has some people in her amen choir that was like, you right, girl. I never thought about it like that. That make perfect sense. It's stupid. It's stupid. Does the fact that your food was free taste different because it was paid for with a credit card than with cash? It wasn't your money. So are we really shaming black men for actually having, first of all, the desire to take you on a date, which is a bad attitude, take you on a date, and then you still complain about the method of payment when you ate for free? Girl, bye. Sis, no. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Negatory ghostwriter, pump the brakes, flag on the play. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because I don't know what message you think you're getting across to a man by saying that. But I guarantee you it's not the message you think you are. If you think that means you have high standards, no, sis, it means you're problematic and likely toxic, right? Just like we say toxic masculinity, which is, we'll talk about that. But if we're going to call someone toxic, I'm going to call that behavior what it is. It's toxic. You can't do that. Do not do to someone else what you would not want done to you. Basic biblical principles I'm talking about here. Don't do that, because it has an effect. And so when you see more men saying, bump these women, I don't want to date black women because they're so angry, they're bitter, they're problematic, we never know what they want, there's some validity to that. Right? Perceived or imaginary. Perceived or real. It's there. And so my thing is not saying that everything that we do has to be about winning winning over a man for romantic desires. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it causes tension. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. It causes tension in our relationships, and we can't grow in our relationships if there's this constant tension. And so we got to figure out why that tension is there. And so sometimes that starts with you really examining your own stuff. But as I always talk about is this real notion of power. Because if you guys remember, I think it was last year, there was an article by Very Smart Brothers, and a lot of us follow it. Sometimes I read the articles too, and I admit I co-signed on this a year ago until I stopped and I thought about it. And the title of the article was "Black Men Are the White People of Black People," and I remember there was such a visceral reaction across the board to this article. From all sides. And they caught a lot of heat for that article. Now, what I'm going to say is this. I really want to break that down a little bit. Because most of the people, including myself, and I admit that. Now, I'm in a different place. I'm in a different place now. But at that time where I was, I reacted emotionally, and I didn't think it through to see how that actually makes sense. Because sometimes things are said to speak to our ego. And if you understand the id and the ego and all this kind of stuff, the ego is not really real, right? It's a reflection of self. It's how you view yourself, right? And so this is why, sort of like, our current president, right? This is why any attacks or perceived attacks on him, he perceives them as threats, right? Even though it may just be constructive criticism and something that he needs to hear. But it's a perceived attack because he's all ego, right? There's no depth there. It's just ego. It's all about appearances. And so just in the same vein where our current president does everything that he can that gives the illusion of power, it's not real power, right? Not really. Now, obviously, he's a powerful person because of the laws and all of the forces that back him. But in his actions and the things that he does and says, they don't really come across. If you know what real power is, it's not power. You can see right through it. And so what I'm saying to my sisters is this. We're doing things out of ego, and we're responding to things out of ego, right? Because they're perceived attacks or something. It appeals to something in us that makes us feel good. And so we're not really thinking about the substance of the thing. And so I really want to break that down. So when we say that black men are the white people of black people, and if we think about this from a racial lens, right? We acknowledge that we live under a system of white supremacy, in which white folks have all the power, they have all the money, they own most of the land, they own most of the wealth, they have the power they have the ability to change outcomes, which is power, right? Which means that they have the ability to alter your behavior as well. And so if we really think about that, and we acknowledge, and we say this all the time as black women, we that black girl magic, right? And we do have black girl magic, absolutely. But when we say things like, black women continue to save black men. When we say things that, sisters had to come in and save the voting, save democracy again, right? And then we really look at things in real life, right? Not perceived, but in real life. In real life, black women run the majority of the businesses. Black women are usually the ones that are granted custody over children. In some cases, that's not all, but usually, if all things are equal, black women usually are the ones that are granted custody. Black women are the ones with the most education. We are the ones that are more employed. We are not incarcerated at the same rate. We are the largest voting bloc among our people. And on the reverse, black men are dying at epidemic rates. They're incarcerated at higher rates. When a woman says a black man has done something to her, 9 times out of 10, that woman is going to be believed, right? Men don't have the same earning capacity as women. not black men, right? Now again, we say that they make a few cents on the dollar, a little bit more, but there's not as many of them employed gainfully as we are. So if all of those things are true, and we say that we got to put on a cape and save them, how are they the ones with the power, right? There's tension there because those things cannot both possibly be true. So how do we then say that we have to save people if they're the ones with the power, right? A civilian or a human cannot save Superman, right? Because Superman is all powerful. He's the strongest man in the world. So if we are indeed the strongest people in our community, and we have all the power, how can it be possible that black men are our oppressor? How? Could it be that some of our inflictions, right? Some of our wounds are self-inflicted. And we'll talk about that. But we really got to unpack these bags. And what I'm asking my sisters to do is this: to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of baggage. And like I always say, you're not meant to carry these bags alone. But yet we've been fed this narrative and we buy into it, where we actually believe that being a strong black woman means breaking your back to do everything, even the things that someone else can help you do. And so I want to unpack that a little bit more. But before we do that, we're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to get back to talking about how to unpack those bags.
Hey guys, I'm Asia Morgan, an intern at WBGR Network and a proud senior of Morgan State University. Here's a few pointers on campus and community safety. Use your eyes and stay alert. Studies show that looking a predator directly in their face causes them to be less likely to choose you as their victim because you then have the means to easily identify them. Focus on your surroundings and not your phone. And never walk alone. Walk in pairs or in groups wherever you go because we are stronger in numbers. If that's not possible, use safety services. Universities have escort services available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Take advantage when leaving late night study sessions, parties, or anything else where you will be usually traveling alone. And when using riding services like Lyft or Uber, always check to see that you're getting into the right car. If you're traveling alone, be a backseat rider, buckle up no matter what, and never forget to share the details of your trip with a friend or family member. Lastly, trust your instincts. If you feel like something is wrong, 9 times out of 10, it usually is. Don't ignore that feeling. This has been a message from the WBGR PSA Project.
So welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about unpacking our bags. And before we even go there, I just want to pose a question. And I really want real feedback on this. If we are really calling black men the white people of black people, my question is, today, if you could, would you trade places with a black man? And if your answer is no, I'd like to know why not. Because in the same way that we pose these questions to white folks, it's time that we really examine these things for ourselves within our own communities. Because if you cannot say that you would trade places with a black man, you should ask yourself why. Because is it that you really do understand that he has a tough time in this world and you would never want that? Then if that's the case, then they're not the white people of black people. Sis, I would venture to say that we're the white people of black people. And I know that I'm going to get so many clapbacks for that. But understand what I'm saying. If you're upset that I said that about us, but you were not upset that someone else said that about them, ask yourself why. Because at the end of the day, if it's about using your power to oppress other people, it's a problem. Whether it be male, female, black, white, or otherwise, it's an issue. And it needs to be addressed. Because here's the thing. If you think about it like our body, right? In order to stay alive, you got to eat the right foods. You got to drink water. Whoop. you got to drink good water. You have to exercise. You need love. Your body needs the sun. You need energy, right? There are a lot of things that you have to do to stay alive. And when those things are in balance, you're in harmony, and you go to the bathroom and your body excretes those toxins, right? Because your body keeps what it needs for nourishment, and it gets rid of the bad, stinky stuff that poison your system. And so we got to look at ourselves under that lens, like a body, right? Because we are everything and we are in everything, right? And because of that, we really got to look at ourselves like a system. And when the system is in harmony and you breathe and, things are flowing well, the energy, your air is flowing well, there's no tension. But what happens when the air and all of the stuff in your body starts circulating and it reaches a point of tension? You feel it in your physical body, right? You get those lumps in your neck and in your back and all that kind of stuff, and it causes a physical reaction because there is tension. And when there is tension, the energy, the air, whatever your body needs to function properly has met a roadblock. And a lot of times, sisters, we find ourselves, our energy is facing constant tension with our men because there's a block there. And those blockages lead to dis-ease, right? And dis-ease or disease is negative ease, right? It is simply, it's simply the lack of constant movement, the lack of constant flow. And so we really got to stop and think about what is causing this tension, what is causing the energy to not just continue to circle like it should. Because when we have these blockages, it causes us physical and emotional pain. It's real. Your body corresponds with it's all energy. Your body corresponds with all of this energy. And so if you can understand that your body understands how to take the nutrients and get rid of the waste, you need to do the same thing. So if you're holding on to things in your life that don't serve you, if you're holding on to relationships that no longer serve you, not because you're better, but because, hey, sometimes you need better, right? Sometimes you got to eat more vegetables. Sometimes you got to stop eating meat. You got to stop doing the things that poison your system. And sometimes those wounds are self-inflicted, right? Because in the same way, if you have a paper cut, sometimes you may not even know you have a paper cut. You may look down and be like, damn, I'm bleeding, right? You may have blood on your sleeve, whatever. But that's exactly what our relationships are like when we're operating from a place of pain, right? What happens is we get these cuts, whether it be generational pain, relationship pain, or self-inflicted pain. You may not even notice the pain, right? Because sometimes we don't even notice the pain until we notice the pain. We notice the cut, right? But that doesn't stop us from bleeding. And what happens is, in the same way that little paper cut can bleed on your shirt, sometimes when we're in pain, we bleed on people that didn't cut us. We bleed and hurt those people who didn't hurt us. And so I think that sometimes as women, and as Black women in particular, we are angry. Damn right we're angry. Because yes, people have failed us, right? I mean, I can't even tell you how many of my friends that I know have been raped or molested by somebody in their family. That's real. That's real, sis. How many times you've been cheated on and hurt in relationships? That's real. How many times? And I get it. I get the anger. But you can't continue to bleed on people that didn't cut you. You can't make all of our men pay for what someone else did, because you're only hurting you. Because by virtue of hurting our community, we're hurting ourselves. And so we really got to unpack that on a deep, deep spiritual level, and not just a surface level. Because I would venture to say we don't have paper cuts, but we have wide open, gaping wounds. and we don't see it. And it's like how the body heals itself. And so when the wounds start to heal, you don't feel the pain as much, right? And so if someone can do something or say something to trigger you over and over and over again about the same thing, you're not healed. Because once the wound starts to scab over, the sensitivity is not there anymore, right? So if I cut myself here and the wound heals and I don't pick at the wound and all that kind of stuff, and yet then a week later I come and slap myself on that same spot, I don't feel it. I don't feel that pain anymore. Why? Because I'm healed. And so, sisters, we got to really, really heal and, not allow these things to pick at the wounds within us. And I would say that even though things that have happened to us may have been beyond our control, healing is absolutely your responsibility. It's your responsibility because you may never get the closure that you need. And are you going to go unhealed because someone else didn't say, I'm sorry? Someone else didn't acknowledge that? No. Because again, this is about your future and your life and your growth. And so are you really going to allow yourself to continue to bleed on other people and not allow your wound to heal because you're mad at someone else? You wouldn't do that. So in the same way, we got to really look in the mirror and unpack our own issues. And if it takes having a conversation with someone, if you can, if that will help you to heal, then do that. But what I say is this: we cannot say I'm only human to excuse our bad behavior and then not acknowledge that we're only human, which means you're fallible, which means you mess up. And sometimes those mess ups impact other people. But I'm trying to get us to stop messing up so much on such a large scale, right? Because I mess up too. But it's not about the mess up itself, but it's about changing the behavior and not continuing to pick at the scab so that it never heals. And we'll unpack this a little bit further, but that's all we have for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Join in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 11 o'clock. And sis, we will talk.